New Automotive Report warns diesel scarcity to become new range anxiety by Amy Turner, 13th of January. As soon as I saw New Automotive, I thought this is going to be a load of shite. What we do, we are increasing the pace of the clean energy transition with a focus on road transport, one of the largest sources of greenhouse gases and air pollution. We use data to tell persuasive stories, informing the public and influencing policy development. We help people understand the biggest revolution in personal transport since the time of Henry Ford and how it can benefit them. Good luck on helping them understand how it will benefit them, because I've looked at it from all ways up and I can't see a benefit. Let's have a look who they are. About us, team, all these people, no doubt all nice people with a job to do. There you go, that's them. And I've said before about that photo. When I was younger and I played for a football team, we used to do practice sessions, and the lads would be out with the girlfriends and didn't want to go and practice. They'd be there on Saturday, they'd be there on Sunday with a kit and to play, but turning up for training. So our manager, Johnny Rawcliffe, he used to say, it's a team photograph. There's a photographer coming. And lo and behold, everybody would turn up for training. But the mums would send them out, they'd have the boots polished, the socks pulled up, clean shorts, clean shirt, hair brushed, looked like $1 million. Team photograph. Now I look at that and I think they should have told them there was a team photograph that day, because I have no faith at all. I look at those people, probably all nice people. I'm sure they are all nice people. But I look at people who turn up to have the photograph taken with trainers on, and I just think, no, there's no structure, there's no hope. New Automotive works to speed up the switch to electric cars and cleaner road transport. Do you think they know any better than you do? Do you think they actually know? Or do you think they're getting paid to tell you something? Let's go through the article. New Automotive Report warns diesel scarcity to become the new range anxiety. So you see what they've done there? The biggest problem with electric vehicles is range anxiety. So what they've tried to do is take the biggest problem from electric vehicles and put it onto diesels, because you know as well as I do that you can jump in a diesel now and drive around the world, stopping for 5 minutes every 600 or 700 miles and just keep going. The car would keep going and you'd have an endless supply of fuel. You can get fuel anywhere. They've turned it into range anxiety. They've got that in with diesels in the headline. That took some doing. It took some planning, because nobody gives a shit about range anxiety in a diesel. They know wherever they're going, there will be a fuel station on the way they'll fill up. Range Anxiety by Amy Turner. But bear in mind, Amy, and it's AM Online, so they just get somebody else's article and repeat it, and somehow they get paid for it. London is on course to become Britain's first diesel-free city, with some filling stations in the capital likely to stop stocking the fuel before the end of the decade, according to new analysis. Wow. In its report, The Death of Diesel, New Automotive, an NGO that works to increase the pace of the clean energy transition in road transport, finds the diesel car park has already fallen 21% from its national peak, and that the sharpest declines are concentrated in London, where the reduction is described as broadly based across boroughs, driven by air quality policies and vehicle replacement trends. New Automotive identifies Camden as the London area that has recorded the steepest drop in diesel car numbers, recording a 64.6% fall since peak diesel, with Wandsworth, the City of London, Merton and Lambeth close behind. The pace of change in the capital is being driven by two pressures: the near total collapse of new diesel car sales and the steady rise in scrappage as older vehicles reach end of life. Well, they've stopped making diesels, otherwise people would keep buying them. Used diesels are selling very, very well, and the prices are going up. Where electric vehicle prices have dropped 7.4%, I think it was, and it's more than that. It's a lot more than that. Where electric vehicles have dropped, diesels have gone up 2.5%. So there's a 10% difference between diesels and electric vehicles that have dropped. Diesels plus, EVs not so much. So there's a steady rise in the value of diesels and a huge drop in the value of electric vehicles that these people are trying to push on you. New Automotive notes that new diesel cars now account for less than 5% of the UK's new car market, while vehicles are typically scrapped at around 17 years old, meaning the large diesel cohorts sold in early 2010s are now heading towards scrappage. The diesels that are on the road today will still be around when all your EVs are in the scrapyard. They will. Forecourt demand slides. It said the change in fleet mix is already feeding through into forecourt demand. That is absolute garbage. If it was feeding through to forecourt demand and people weren't buying them, they would be doing what electric vehicles are doing and plummeting in price, but they're not, they're going up. And not only that, they're selling like hotcakes. That's why they're going up. Things that sell like hotcakes go up because dealers aren't stupid, and there's a thing called maximising your profit. So basically, you make the most out of what you've got. Using average diesel sales per filling station, New Automotive reports that London's diesel sales have fallen 39% since the start of 2020 and are now lower than during the 2021 lockdown period. With diesel numbers already relatively low in the capital and continuing to fall, the report concludes some London filling stations are likely to stop stocking diesel before the end of the decade, as retailers respond to declining demand and repurpose sites for EV charging and other revenue streams. So, a while ago, a chap had bought an EV in London because of the congestion charge and the clean air charge, and he'd bought a Nissan Leaf. And I worked out that the depreciation on his Nissan Leaf, which at the time was about £700 a month, with his £700 depreciation, again, he could have bought a petrol car, paid his fuel, paid his congestion charge, his clean air charge, his car parking charge, and still been better off than having an EV.
Looming ULEZ deadline, driving people to offload quality old cars, says CarWow, by Amy Turner. This was on the 14th of August 2023. Good deals are to be had as London motorists rush to ditch their non-compliant vehicles ahead of the expansion of London's ultra-low emission zone, ULEZ, on the 29th of August. New data from CarWow showed a jump in the number of Londoners uploading non-ULEZ compliant cars on its platform to 30%, one in almost three, thank you CarWow, of all listings in July. That was up from 20%, one in five, in November 2022, when the planned expansion of the ULEZ scheme was announced. The online marketplace said this indicated a rush to sell non-compliant vehicles ahead of the deadline, with a recent poll revealing that 27% of CarWow users were selling their cars specifically due to ULEZ. Sally Foote, CarWow's UK Managing Director, said outside the major metropolitan areas where there are fewer cars and people are much less likely to have these schemes implemented, car buyers are keeping their eyes peeled for good quality used cars that don't need to be ULEZ compliant. We see a great conversion on quality non-compliant cars, especially the ones that have full service history photos, so we know there's still a high demand for good condition cars in other parts of the UK. So again, the only reason they're selling them is because of the stupid tax. She said the trend is likely to gather pace once more consumers become aware of the implications of the changes. This is a confusing time for many drivers. We found that 64% of Londoners are unsure if their car would incur charges under the new ULEZ expansion. As more people come to realise the impending increase in ownership costs, or are hit with fines from September onwards, we think there's likely to be a shift in supply and demand for affected cars across the capital, concludes Fort. Despite widespread confusion around the scheme, CarWow research found broad support for the schemes is positive. 40% of Londoners supported the zones compared to just 31% who opposed them. So 29% couldn't give a After that story came out, I sent them a little note. Then perhaps your magazine and all the other parrot sites should make it clear to people that it's actually cheaper to pay the ULEZ fines than it is to run a nice, clean little Renault Zoe, which is currently depreciating circa £700 a month. There we go. That's the cap ID for a Renault Zoe hatchback from 2019 onwards. And that's the prices. You'll see their trade price has gone down from 13,600 in July 2023 to 12,900 in August 2023. Retail £15,395 to 14,695. More than enough to pay for your fuel around London and your ULEZ charges. So all that in the magazine, all the stuff you hear, all crap. Scaremongering, shite. Round about the same time, I saw this tweet from a guy called Nicholas Davies. ULEZ expansion means I reluctantly have to sell my Saab 9.3 convertible. 1999, 2-litre automatic, non-turbo, beige leather, 76,000 miles, MOT, October, formerly of Joe Hallenbach. Well, I know Joe. I've had it 2 years, perfect summer car, not fast but lovely. £1,000 to a good home on Twitter. Located Hearts. Now, I did a couple of calculations and I sent back, please have a rethink. A zero emissions price ranging Nissan Leaf depreciates each month by more than your ULEZ charges. In fact, last month alone it went down by £1,150. That's 164 gallons of petrol or 92 days ULEZ charges. Your car didn't. False economy and soulless driving. Stick with a Saab. And just because I never put anything, like the evangelists do and just make things up and pluck them out of thin air, I always put actual data, proper information to back up my claims. And you'll see there that the retail price of a Nissan Leaf went down from £7,125 to £5,975 in April 2023 from March 2023. So all your scare stories that come out in these stupid motor trade publications, all the crap that you see, all these things about fuel stations not stocking diesel, you can see actually it's cheaper to drive a diesel than it is to drive an EV. Worked it all out. Done it.
It is highly likely that as diesel vehicles get scarcer, filling station owners will question how much, if any, diesel fuel they should stock. At some future point, diesel simply won't be available at the majority of filling stations, the report states. EVs overtake diesel by 2030 nationally. New Automotive projects diesel car numbers will fall to just over 5 million by 2030, with electric cars overtaking diesel cars that year, before collapsing to fewer than 250,000 by 2035, because of course there's a ZEV mandate. There is at the moment, but there won't be. Let's see what happens to that when reform get in. Based on those trends, the report says London will be the first city to empty of diesel cars and vans, while Scotland is positioned to become the first diesel-free British nation. While diesel vans have continued to rise nationally, reaching 4.4 million in Great Britain by mid-2025, London is again bucking the trend. The report shows diesel van numbers are already falling across much of the capital, again led by Camden, reinforcing its expectation the capital will be the first place where diesel becomes functionally obsolete across both private and light commercial fleets. London's shift is also reshaping diesel ownership patterns beyond the M25. The report describes a clear urban to rural migration of older diesel cars, with vehicles displaced from the capital increasingly sold on to more rural areas with fewer restrictions. Which to me means it's not that people don't want the diesels, it's that they're being taxed out of them and charged out of them. Does that not mean, can these people in the trainers not look at that and think, yeah, there is a market for diesel, otherwise the people in the country won't buy them? Pathetic. However, it adds that the effects of London's policies could extend into surrounding constituencies, citing sharp declines in older diesel ownership in parts of the south east, where residents may still need to drive into London, influencing purchasing decisions. This is making more of an argument that they want the diesels and they're moving further away, but they still want them. They can't afford to have them here, not because of the running costs, because of the charges, because of old Sado Khan. But out here, still cheaper to have a diesel. It is, no matter what you say, no matter what you wear, it's cheaper to have a diesel. For motorists, the report warns that as diesel vehicles become scarcer, residual values are likely to keep falling. Well, who won that? Because they've got that completely wrong. If vehicles get scarcer and people want them, residual values go up. So you stick to making your stupid stories up and leave the car trade stuff to car dealers because you haven't got a clue. Raising the risk of diesel cars becoming stranded assets if fuel becomes less convenient to access and resale demand weakens further. Gordon Barmer, Executive Director at the Petrol Retailers Association, told AM, "At present our members have no definitive plans to cease selling diesel." Of course they haven't. Nonetheless, they consistently track evolving customer preferences and adjust their services in response. This is reflected in investments such as expanding retail shops. When was the last time you went to a petrol station now that hasn't got a spa in it or something? EV charging facilities and first-class valeting services. Now, I follow a guy on LinkedIn, and the reason I followed him is because I saw a report a few months ago about petrol topping out, petrol usage topping out. That's the maximum you're ever going to sell. And from now on, with EVs coming in, it's going to start falling. Maximum usage. And I read this chap's article, Carl Evans. I read his article and it blew that theory away. There were actually, diesel had gone down, but it appeared that they were going on to petrols and petrol was going up. So I think it was probably New Automotive that came out with that crap as well. So having followed him, I sent him a link to this article and asked him what he made of it. In all honesty, never expected to hear a reply, because whenever I send something to the EV people, I never get a reply. Never.
Car manufacturers, meanwhile, finished the year well ahead of their ZEV mandate requirements, with the market generating around 60,000 surplus credits overall. I've emailed them, I've sent them a message on Twitter, and I've also sent them this letter on LinkedIn. Hi there, I read this article with interest and note that your calculations show that the UK motor trade will hit the ZEV mandate target when flexibilities are taken into account, in fact with 60,000 credits to spare. Perhaps they could sell some back to Tesla and the Chinese that they bought last year when they achieved the target. I wondered if this was actually the case, why the manufacturers and dealers are still pre-registering EVs on New Year's Eve and just compounding the catastrophic depreciation pressure that EVs are already plagued with, a year old the next day and the old reg in 8 weeks. I am especially sceptical as the SMMT says it has cost the motor trade £5 billion this year at a rate of approximately £11,000 per EV that they have given away in order to meet the ZEV mandate. Interestingly, they also say that we are further away from hitting the target this year than we were last year, almost twice as far away in fact. So to put our mind at rest, please could you share with us your flexibilities calculation, in particular how many low emission ICE engine and hybrid cars are included in the said flexibilities. Thanks in advance, Barrie. I've sent this several times, I've had no reply, and just today, hello, I'm still waiting. Is it a secret? How did we hit the ZEV mandate with 60,000 credits to spare? Please share your calculations or withdraw your statement and print a retraction. No answer.
So, you imagine my surprise when I got a reply from Edge Data, the Forecourt Insights report. Barrie Crampton. This report, I like him already, using the term lightly, from new automotive is largely speculative and relies on data sets that aren't especially relevant. For example, focusing on new car sales in Camden, when the vast majority of fuel sold in London is to vehicles travelling in from outside the city. This report is little more than an exercise in wishful thinking from yet another think tank, attempting to manifest mass EV adoption into existence via a clickbait media strategy. When you're right, you're right. Actual fuel demand data for 2025 versus 2024 tells a different story. UK-wide, diesel demand fell 2% year on year, but overall fuel demand rose 2%, suggesting diesel drivers are switching to petrol or hybrid rather than a BEV. Now, could it not perhaps suggest that diesels are being replaced with other diesels that are more economical than the ones they replaced, so they need 2% less diesel to fuel them? This guy knows what he's talking about, so we'll leave it with him. Is a 2% drop in diesel demand a disaster for fuel retailers? No, it just means forecourt operators will respond by matching deliveries and perhaps tank configuration to the new demand patterns. In London, on a per station basis, diesel demand in London actually grew 3% year on year. This is partly driven by a small reduction in the number of forecourts, but pricing apps like petrol prices clearly show that station density and distribution in London remains higher than the rest of the UK. The term fake news springs to mind. Thank you, Carl. This is your think tanks. This is the people who wear trainees to work when they look like the last time they did any form of sports was like 50 years ago. Not like me, peak of physical fitness. I mean, this is what these people are telling you all the time. They just spout crap. And then you talk to proper people. That's what you need to do before you make any decisions, before you let stories like this influence you. You need to find proper people who don't have an agenda, who don't want you to do something for their benefit. Because if you listen to people like that, they are going to cost you a serious amount of money. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.